Building muscle is an ongoing procedure that involves more than just working out hard at the gym and eating right. Although it was always thought that the three main mechanisms causing muscle development were mechanical strain, metabolic stress, and muscular injury, current research has provided fresh insights into these processes. Let's start by discussing the idea of muscle damage. It was once commonly believed that pain in the muscles and some swelling following exercise were signs of muscle growth. New research, however, indicates that these immediate symptoms of damage are not directly linked to muscle growth. Instead, during the recovery stage, when the muscles heal and adjust to the strains placed on them during exercise, muscle growth takes place. These results have caused the emphasis to change from purposefully inflicting significant muscle damage to enhancing the healing process. Sufficient sleep, proper diet, and general lifestyle choices are essential for enabling muscle growth and repair. This insight calls into question the idea that the main goal of an exercise program should be to maximize the amount of muscle damage. Now let's talk about metabolic stress. It used to be thought that the accumulation of chemical byproducts and the consequent burning feeling that resulted from vigorous exercise were important drivers of muscle development. Recent studies, however, have revealed that training strategies that prioritize high metabolic stress, such as short recovery intervals and high repetition sets, might not be as beneficial for building muscle as previously believed. It has been demonstrated that longer rest intervals and avoiding total fatigue produce superior outcomes in terms of muscle hypertrophy. This change in knowledge raises the possibility that metabolic stress primarily acts as a stimulant for other critical mechanisms, such as the release of hormones and growth factors that aid in the development of muscle. Although metabolic stress is still a necessary component of a successful training regimen, it shouldn't be the only thing considered when trying to enhance muscle growth. On the flip side, mechanical stress has been shown over and again to be the most important factor in muscle growth. The force and strain that is applied to the muscles during exercise as they stretch and contract against resistance is referred to as mechanical tension. Within the muscle cells, this strain triggers chemical pathways that indicate a desire for development and adaptability. People are recommended to concentrate on using a complete range of motion and lifting bigger weights during workouts to create higher mechanical stress. This method guarantees that the muscles receive the required stimulation to encourage development. A key idea in utilizing mechanical stress for the best possible muscle growth is progressive overload, which means raising the resistance progressively over time. Here are 4 changes you should think about making to your exercises to maximize your muscle growth. 1. Put progress ahead of pain. As you gain strength, concentrate on progressively increasing the weight and repetitions of the same exercises rather than switching up your routine to cause stiffness. 2. Rest with purpose. Give yourself enough time to recover between sets. Aim for at least 1.5 to 2 minutes or more for complex, high-intensity exercises. In succeeding sets, this maximizes the mechanical stress and enables improved recovery. 3. Keep your form correct. Don't shorten your reps, manage your weight throughout the eccentric period, and don't use momentum. To get the ideal mechanical stress on the muscles, pay close attention to good form. 4. Strengthen the mental-muscular connection. To improve the sensation and activation of the targeted muscle, concentrate on deliberately contracting it throughout each repetition. More muscle growth may result from this, especially in the upper body. You may maximize the growth of your muscles by incorporating these changes into the way you train. Remember that developing muscle requires time and consistency, so be patient and concentrate on using the right form at all times. That's all there is to it for now. Please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel if you thought it was useful to receive additional educational content. Share it with your friends in case they can use it. For even more fantastic topics, don't forget to check out our other playlists and videos. Please share any thoughts or recommendations you may have in the comments section below.